Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers and to our head-to-head review of the ASICS Novablast 5 and the New Balance 1080 V14. Both of these shoes have had some interesting updates over their last generations that arguably have brought them closer together in terms of what they deliver. You could say that both these shoes are shooting for a little bit more versatility. Do they deliver? Which one's the best? Which one's our favourite? Which one would we recommend? How would you use both of these shoes? We're going to tell you that in the upcoming video, so watch on for our head-to-head between the ASICS Novablast 5 and the New Balance 1080 V14. Quick details then, the ASICS Novablast 5 stack height has 41.5mm on the forefoot, 33.5 in the heel for an 8mm drop. Meanwhile, the New Balance 1080 V14 has 38mm in the heel, 32mm in the forefoot for a 6mm drop. When it comes to weight, ASICS has managed to shave a little off the Novablast 5. In our UK men's 8.5 test shoe, it now tips the scales at a pretty impressive 8.9 ounces or 251 grams. The New Balance 1080 V14 has put on a bit of weight in its generation. In our men's UK 8.5, it now tips the scales at 10.1 ounces or 285 grams. On price, the RRP for the New Balance is $165 or £160. The Novablast 5 drops in at a cheap $140 or £135. Let's give you a quick shoe comparison, starting with the midsoles. Well, the Novablast 5 sticks largely to the Novablast blueprint with a max stack midsole, but uses a new bouncier foam, Flight Foam Blast Max. There's a large rocker, a wide forefoot platform, but a reduced heel extension here. Meanwhile, the New Balance 1080 V14 has a more conservative stack of Fresh Foam X, also with a rockered midsole. Now, while the Novablast 5 is softer this generation, the 1080 V14 has gone the other way with a slightly firmer feel than the 1080 V13. Up top, the New Balance 1080 V14 has engineered mesh uppers, which are more hugging than the looser fit of the Novablast 5's more premium jacquard mesh. There's significantly less flex in the toe box of the 1080, making for a more wrapped, less airy fit overall. Both shoes have plush padded heel collars. The 1080s have a little more. The gusseted tongues on the 1080 are also much more padded than Novablast 5, which saves some weight with a thin, nicely wrapping design. If you flip them over, the New Balance 1080 V14 has a horseshoe around the midfoot, single pad of protective rubber in the middle of the forefoot, then rubber patches on the heels, which are thicker and more durable than we saw on the last generation. Meanwhile, the Novablast 5 outsole sticks to a relatively standard covering of ASICS AHA low rubber. You're still not getting that top level grip of the AHA Plus that you got on the ASICS Novablast 2, but it is sort of pretty well covered for the outsole. So when it comes to fit, I ran in a UK 8.5, which is my regular shoe size in both of these shoes. The biggest thing to note on fit here is that the New Balance 1080 V14 fit really snug. It makes for good hold and security, but they're not that roomy at true to size. They're a tad cramped across the top of the midfoot, something that you'll notice if, like me, you've got quite high feet. Some people found they might be a bit short on the length as well. The Novablast 5 is cavernous by comparison. It's really spacious and airy with a roomier toe box. On the flip side of that, though, is some people have found the Novablast 5 a little bit too spacious, but I've got wide feet and I like space in shoes that I'd use for longer, easier miles. But still, aside from that, I'd still go true to size in both shoes, but I think some might want to consider half a size up in the New Balance for a bit more of a roomy fit.
So in terms of fit, these two shoes have been absolutely spot on for me. No issues to report. I've got them both in a UK size 8, which is my typical running shoe size, and I would say they are or have been true to size fitting shoes for me. I wouldn't be looking to kind of size up or size down in either of these shoes. I think in terms of things like space in the toe boxes, it's very similar for me, you know, pretty roomy and spacious there. Similar level of kind of padding throughout the shoes, maybe a touch more on the heel collar on the New Balance 1080 V14. I think the biggest difference for me is just how those uppers feel and what that kind of does for the fit. I think on the Novablast 5, it's a little bit more relaxed feeling. I would say a bit more snug feeling. I think with the 1080 V14, there's a bit more structure to that upper, and if that's something you prefer in terms of fit, then I think that's what the 1080 V14 is most going to give you over the Novablast 5. I think with that more relaxed fit as well, the Novablast 5 just feels a touch broader and a little bit more spacious in general throughout the shoe. So if you're looking for a roomier fit, I think the Novablast 5 is going to give you that. If you're looking for a shoe that's going to be very comfortable, very padded, and give you good space up front in the toe box, then I would say that both of these shoes are going to serve you well.
The fit for me in these two shoes, I'm a size 8 in the UK. These are both size 8s. Very similar fit to both of them. They're both shoes designed for comfort. They're both shoes designed to offer plenty of space in the forefoot. And they're both very comfortable. I've got fairly average width feet, and I've had no issues at all with these. Straight from the off, they're very, very comfortable. Plenty of padding on them. I would say that the Novablast 5 is probably slightly roomier. It's a little bit wider than the 1080 V14, but not massively. There's not loads in it. I think if you can wear one, you're very likely to be able to wear the other one very, very comfortably. There's also plenty of space before the big toe as well. So definitely would stay to my size in both of these shoes. It's very comfortable upper, very easy to lace up. I haven't had any issues at all in either of these shoes.
So when it comes to fit of the two shoes, I've got a UK 9 in both of these shoes, which is a US 10 with the ASICS Novablast 5. It's a US 9.5 with the New Balance. That kind of difference in US sizing is reflected in the way they fit. You have got a more dialed in fit with the New Balance, but actually, even if they're the same US size, I think you'd have a more kind of dialed in fit around the toes in the New Balance, because the upper on the Novablast 5 is very roomy around the toe box. Like, you've got a lot of volume in there, and as someone with a narrow foot, I do have a bit too much room, but it's not something that's been a problem at all. The fit's been very secure around the heel and midfoot. I've got the right length in terms of the room in front of my toes, and with the New Balance, I've had no real concerns at all with the fit. You've got certainly a plumper and a more padded tongue on the New Balance compared to the Novablast, but it's a nice, comfortable feeling. It hasn't felt too hot or oppressive, although I have been running in pretty cold conditions in both of these shoes. But overall, I would stick to your normal size with both of these shoes when it comes to the fit, and I've had no concerns at all with rubbing or anything like that.
Now, in testing, I've run more than 40 miles in New Balance 1080 V14. That's mostly been easy plodding with some runs up to 90 minutes. I've covered well north of 50 miles in the Novablast 5, including a full 4-hour solo marathon test. I've tested both shoes across the range of paces that we usually do, covering slow and easy, long runs right up to faster intervals and progression runs. And as usual, I've run mainly on road, but with some light off-road runs in there as well, just to test the stability. Now, a quick take on both shoes, and the story here really is that these shoes are coming closer together, I think, in terms of the ride. While the Novablast 5 runs softer, the 1080 V14 is back to being snappier with this generation, so they're now much closer in terms of the ride than you got from the previous generations of both shoes. The New Balance 1080 V14 has a marginally stiffer midsole-outsole combo that offers some extra resilience and immediacy. I think that smooths the transitions. The response is much quicker now, and the foam returns faster than you've got with the 1080 V13, so it's a bit snappier and a bit more versatile all round, I think. The ASICS Novablast 5 offers a nice smooth ride that responds well on toe off and feels springy but controlled. It's a bit softer though than I think you got from the previous generation. When you're feeling good, running with good form and pushing the pace, the Novablast 5 feels energetic though, there's a bit more bounce, but it's also cushioned enough to accommodate slower paces. Though sometimes on heavier legs, because of that added softness, I did find that it felt a little bit soggy. Now, I also did a side-by-side mile to see how these two really compare when you've got them both on your feet, and here's what I found. So I've just done my side-by-side mile. I've got the Novablast 5 on the left foot, I've got the New Balance 1080 V14 on the right foot, and while I thought these shoes might be quite different in terms of the types of run that they would do and the ride that they deliver, I think actually there's a lot more similarities than I'd expected between the two shoes. The fact is, I think the Novablast 5 have come sort of towards the softer end than they did with the Novablast 4, which were a little bit firmer, a little bit snappier, while the New Balance 1080 V14 has added a little bit of extra stiffness, which brings them a little bit up from the really soft end into something that's a little bit firmer and a little bit snappier. So they've now much closer together in terms of the type of ride they deliver, the type of immediacy that you get, all the softness and cushioning, all of those things. It's much more even over those two things, although they do feel quite different on the foot. One of them is a big, roomy, airy, loose-fitting shoe. That's the Novablast 5. Plenty of room in the toe box. They just feel really spacious, really nice. The kind of shoe that I would happily sort of think about, okay, they've got the room here for going ultra and really long haul, long hours on feet. The New Balance 1080 V14, by contrast, are very compact, very snug fitting. There's just not as much clearance. There's a bit of flex across the top of the toe box, but yeah, they just feel a lot more hugging now. The Novablast 5 a lot more roomy. So depending on how you like your shoes, and true to size, that's the difference, one of the main differences. And then you come to the ride, and this is something that I'm finding hard to kind of put into words, the different sensations of the shoes. I think they both probably cater for sort of similar runs. I think they're both going to be better towards the easier end of your paces. I think the Novablast 5 being slightly lighter, they feel lighter on the foot. I think they're a bit more kind of bounce, a bit more energy. They might be a little bit more versatile overall, but actually I think these shoes would probably cater for the same kinds of runs for me, and I would use them more towards the sort of lower and slower up to kind of middling and maybe a little bit beyond that kind of run. They come about this or get there in a slightly different way though. I think the foam in the New Balance 1080 V14, it compresses less, it's much more immediate in its return. It kind of leads you to sort of roll through a lot quicker. The transitions feel a little bit snappier and a bit more smooth, I find a bit more consistent. The Novablast achieves its kind of energy a little bit more from a bounce, so it sinks a bit more and then it returns and bounces and sort of almost kind of propels you a bit more with kind of bounce and spring rather than this kind of smooth, slightly stiffer roll through transition that you get. They both offer oodles of comfort and cushioning. They're both really well protected under the road. I feel like the stack is quite similar in terms of the amount of road feel you get. I think they're both pretty similar in terms of the stability that they offer. They both got good platforms to run off, nice and soft, pretty reliable. I think actually maybe the New Balance is just a touch more reliable, particularly if I'm landing forefoot rather than further back. But they're both nice and protective, but they're both really comfortable on the foot. And I would happily do long, slow and easy or short, slow and easy in this shoe. I think if I was picking an up-tempo shoe, maybe I'd be inclined to go for the Novablast just because it feels lighter and airier and roomier on the foot. If I was going for really, really long miles, I think also I'd go Novablast 5 just because you've got that extra wiggle room, or maybe I'd have to go as half a size up in the New Balance 1080 V14. But when it comes to sort of the ride that I enjoy the most, actually, I think just for clipping along and cruising at maybe middling paces, I didn't think I was going to say this, but I actually feel like the New Balance 1080 V14 might be the better shoe.
So in terms of my running time in these two shoes, I would say it's been solid overall. These are very good cushioned daily trainer shoes. These are shoes personally I would be using for kind of easy to moderate paces. These can work great for short runs. They're going to be great long run shoes. I think if you're looking for a comfortable marathon shoe, both of these shoes would fit that profile. In terms of the key differences, one of the smaller ones, there is a small weight difference. The Novablast 5 is the lighter of the two shoes for me, my UK size 8. I think the 1080 V14, about 20 grams heavier, but in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't had a massive influence. But if you wanted the lighter shoe, it's the Novablast 5. What's going to have more bearing on your running experience is going to be the midsole foams, where that midsole foam lays, how it works in terms of what you're getting in the outsole as well, which I think definitely has a part to play in terms of these two shoes. If we start on the Novablast 5, which is the new of the two shoes, that's got that FF Blast Max, which has been used in one other shoe so far in the ASICS range. Now, compared to the fresh foam in the 1080 V14, it definitely feels softer, definitely feels a lot more plush. It's not overly plush, but compared to the fresh foam, which I think has changed from the fresh foam in the 1080 V13, it has a little bit more resilience to it. It's a little bit more hardy compared to the FF Blast Max. Now, with that FF Blast Max, it's definitely spread across a wider, kind of broader platform, which I think, what that dictates really is, it's comfort first. And I think that's really what I've experienced in my time in the Novablast 5. When you get out on it, it's smooth, controlled, stable, and very comfortable first and foremost. In terms of a lively bounce, I think I got it in the initial runs. It wasn't really replicated for me in successive runs. I think with the New Balance 1080 V14 in contrast, I think you're getting moderate bounce there, but it's been consistent throughout my runs. And again, you've got a nice kind of gentle rocker there, like the ASICS shoe. It's just kind of, nudging you forward just enough and helping you to kind of tick that running time off. So from a point of view, I think, the runs and the types of paces I've described, I think both these shoes work very well. I think the experience of those foams and where they're set really kind of dictate how it's going to feel. And I do feel that on the Novablast 5, it's a softer, more comfortable feeling. I think with the 1080 V14, it's still a comfortable shoe, but I think, as I said, I think there's a harder edge or a slightly firmer edge to the feel of the midsole foam and a more moderate, noticeable bounce throughout my running time in that shoe. I talked about the outsoles, and I said with the Novablast 5, I think it's, you've got a kind of big, kind of wide outsole here. And I think that really contributes to that kind of very controlled feel in that shoe. And I think it's a similar story with the 1080 V14. It's not as wide, but it definitely, I think, helps to counter that kind of controlled, kind of protective feeling in that shoe. From a gripping point of view, I think, you're probably going to get a little bit more kind of grip and performance out of the Novablast 5 outsole. That's kind of what I found. They're not perfect outsole grips, particularly in kind of wetter conditions, but general dry pavements and roads, that's where you're going to use them. Durability, I think the layouts are very similar. They're kind of focusing on the lateral areas really of these shoes, a bit more on the forefoot of the shoes, and I think that maybe there's a little bit more rubber on the ASICS outsole. So for me, I would say getting a bit more life out of the Novablast 5, obviously less wear or signs of wear on that shoe. So yeah, for me, solid cushion daily trainer shoes across the board. Definitely some experiences or difference in experiences, particularly around the midsole makeups, but yeah, very good overall in my time.
Okay, so these two shoes are daily shoes. They're designed to be used for all of your runs. Can also be classed as the sort of shoe that you'd buy if you were maybe just buying one pair of shoes and you wanted to tick off all your miles in a nice, comfortable shoe that could probably do a little bit more. But these two new versions of the shoes are slightly different than previous versions because they have changed the foam in both of these shoes. The 1080 V14. The 1080 V13 was a really, really soft shoe. They'd massively changed the midsole of that shoe and it changed the ride significantly, and a lot of people didn't like it. I liked it. I thought that shoe was really nice because I like soft, comfortable shoes when I'm doing easy runs. But it lost a little bit of stability in that shoe. So they have updated the midsole foam, and it's a bit more like what you'd experience from an earlier version, or a mix of an earlier version of the 1080 range and the 1080 V13. So what you get in the 1080 V14 is a much more balanced midsole. It's soft enough, but it isn't overly soft. It's not really squishy, but it's very comfortable to run in, and it's probably a little bit more versatile than the 1080 V13. Not massively. It's not. I wouldn't say it's an amazingly versatile shoe. It's definitely a shoe that firmly sits in that world of daily comfortable miles. You're probably not going to do a lot of interval training in this shoe. You're probably not going to race in this shoe. But you can do a bit more on it. If you were to buy one shoe, if you're a beginner, or if you're just a sort of general runner who just wants one shoe to just go out and tick off miles in and then in comfort, this is a very good shoe for that. It ticks a lot of boxes. I very much enjoy testing this shoe, and I can see why they have made those changes on a 1080 V13, which was a little bit of a Marmite shoe. The other thing as well is by updating that midsole foam, it's a little bit more stable, which is something that a lot of people didn't like about the 1080 V13. And all in all, it's a very solid, comfortable, enjoyable daily shoe that really veers more towards the easier or longer distance comfortable miles, as opposed to picking up the pace a lot in this shoe. But if you wanted to run a bit faster in it, you can. It's just not perfectly designed for doing that. It's very much an easy or long run shoe. Novablast 5. Now, this shoe has a big update on the previous version, so it does have this new FF Blast Max midsole cushioning in it. The Novablast 4, I really like that shoe. The Novablast range varies quite a lot every time they release a new version of the shoe, and they seem to tweak it quite a bit, and it has quite a polarizing experience for some people who are used to earlier versions of the shoe. This version of the shoe is softer than the Novablast 4. The Novablast 4 was a really good shoe because it was really versatile. The midsole in it wasn't too soft. It was quite a big stack of midsole foam, but it also was quite responsive, and it gave you quite a bit back. It wasn't necessarily loads of energy in the shoe. It was just responsive, and it didn't sink in and take away any energy. So great shoe if you wanted to do a little bit faster sessions. If maybe you're training for a marathon, you want to do your long runs in a shoe that at a consistent pace. Not necessarily an easy pace, but the Novablast 5, this FF Blast Max is noticeably softer than the Novablast 4, and I have a mixed reaction to this shoe. I have used it for about 70k so far, and that's varied over a number of different runs during our marathon training for Valencia. So I've done easy runs in this, I've done interval sessions in it, and I've done a longer run in it. And what I found is that midsole, it works sometimes, doesn't work other times. It does feel to me like it's on certain runs, and specifically on those sort of consistent pace runs where you're maybe running at near to your tempo pace or something like that. It works quite well. It gives you a little bit back. There's not loads of energy return in the shoe that I'm getting from it, but it definitely feels like it's a shoe that's designed for a certain type of run. I think ideally it's a shoe designed for easier runs. It's definitely very comfortable. I really like that midsole when you're just like ticking off the miles and you want something that gives you a little bit of bounce back but not loads. but just feels very, very comfortable on the feet. On the other end of the spectrum, when you're running faster in it, I don't think this has the versatility of the Novablast 4. So it's definitely a shoe that is a different experience than what you would get from the previous version of the shoe. I think now it's very much sits in that realm of daily shoes, but more for the easy runs as well. Easy runs, recovery runs, maybe easy longer runs where you want to just run at a consistent pace. But definitely not a shoe that you'd use for intervals or anything like that. It just feels like it saps my energy a little bit, and I sink in a little bit too much to the ground when I'm trying to run a bit quicker. So comparing these two shoes, you're probably going to look at buying them for the same sort of thing, and they are very similar in a lot of ways. They're really both shoes designed for the easier side of ticking off the miles, the that sort of comfort aspect where you'll want to do a few runs, maybe you're doing 10Ks, 15Ks, 20Ks, and you just want to just go out there and get the miles done, and you're not necessarily doing any intervals or fartlek training or anything like that, because they are a bit limited when it comes to that. They really sit on that easy, comfortable side of daily running shoes. However, having said that, I do think the 1080 V14 has got a little bit more to it. I think that midsole is just a bit more resilient to running at a faster pace. It just gives you a little bit more responsiveness back, and is probably a better all-round shoe when it comes to ticking off all those different types of runs that you'll do. I think the Novablast 5 is solid shoe for comfort. I just don't think it's as versatile as the 1080 V14. There's not a massive difference in it. I'm not comparing a really fast, versatile shoe with a really slow daily training shoe. I'm comparing two very similar daily training shoes, but I think the 1080 V14 just gets a little bit more out of it when you're running at a faster pace, and especially if you're maybe doing tempo sessions or something where you're running at a consistent pace, which is probably faster than your normal easy run pace. I think the 1080 V14 is better for that. Novablast 5. I prefer the Novablast 4 because it was more versatile. I think the Novablast 4 is more versatile than the 1080 V14. So definitely it really comes down to what type of runs you're doing, and if you're just looking for pure comfort over those sort of easier runs as opposed to having a shoe that you can do everything in. Other thing I'd say about these shoes is the outsole is very similar on both of them actually. There is a bit of exposed rubber on there. They're not the best outsoles I've ever seen. I've not had any issues in running in either of these shoes, but the grip isn't amazing. It's quite smooth on the Novablast 5 and on the 1080 V14. It doesn't have any major grip on it. It's not like Puma grip or something like that. It's fine. I've not had any problems on it. I've not been slipping around on the wet ground or anything like that, but I would say they're both fairly average outsoles on these shoes.
Comes to the run test, these are two shoes that I did enjoy testing this year. I find them both pretty impressive cushion daily trainers that do offer, a lot of foam underfoot in terms of protection and comfort, but are still fairly light, do have fairly smooth rides that tick over well. So I have enjoyed running both of these shoes this year. Tested the New Balance 1080 V14 first. I wasn't a huge fan of the 1080 V13, which I just found a little bit too soft for my taste. Like it felt like I was just kind of getting lost in the foam in it, and the extra resiliency you have on the newer shoe is something I certainly appreciate. It just means I can roll through my foot strike a bit more naturally, and I get a bit more of a platform to push against when I'm running at easy paces or fast paces or anything like that. I just find it a more natural shoe to run in now. It disappears on the foot a lot more. I do find it really comfortable, fairly versatile for a day train like this. It's not a shoe that I'd be using for lots of fast runs myself, but it is reasonably versatile as a cushioned shoe for sure. And I do think you've got a better foam in the New Balance than you have in the Novablast 5. I think this version of Fresh Foam X, which gets changed all the time, you never exactly know what's going on with it, but I do think you've got a bouncier feeling, a softer feeling than with the Novablast 5, which has got this new FF Blast Max foam, which is good. Like, it's a decent, balanced, neutral foam. It gives you some comfort. It gives you a little bit back if you're going to run at speed. But mostly, I think if you're going to try and use the Novablast for anything kind of faster, the benefit you get with it is that it's a pretty lightweight shoe, a little bit lighter than the New Balance, and you've got a nice rocker there, so you can move through your foot strike quite smoothly at a range of paces. And the foam, while soft and comfortable, isn't too soft, just like with the New Balance, so you can push against it and get a bit of pace there. I found it's not a shoe, again, that I'd be using for lots and lots of fast running myself, but I do think kind of newer runners who just want a cushion day trainer to do a nice range of runs, both of these shoes do fit the bill pretty well. One thing I like about the Novablast 5 compared to the previous version of the shoe is that they've shaved down this heel bevel a bit, which gives it a slightly more natural rocker feeling from the back. It's quite similar to the one on the New Balance actually, and as a heel striker, definitely appreciate that in both shoes. It makes it feel a lot easier to roll through my foot strike and in a comfortable and kind of natural way. So I did do a short run in both shoes at the same time, and that for me was when it was really apparent that the foam, I think, on the New Balance is better. Like before that, very much, I had quite similar feelings about both shoes. I liked them. They both had good foams. They did a similar job. But actually, when I ran in both shoes at the same time, I did really notice the benefit of, I think, the better foam in the New Balance 1080 with that Fresh Foam X. You've got a softer feeling at the heel, like I say, and it does have a bit more kind of lift off when it comes to the toes. You get a bit more bounce back. And while I don't think that really changes too much in terms of how versatile these shoes are in comparison to each other, I do think it creates a slightly nicer feeling on the run. It's a shoe I probably prefer. Even though it's a little bit heavier, it also feels just a little bit nimbler and smaller almost, because there is still a lot going on at the back of the Novablast 5, but you do have that nice light feeling with this shoe. It does roll through well. I think if I was picking one of these to really try and pick up the pace in, I probably would still lean towards the Novablast, but yeah, I think the ride on the 1080 V14 is a little bit better and kind of more premium. You get a slightly more premium feeling from the better foam you have in the midsole.
Verdict then, and these are both capable daily trainers at the more cushioned end. Both probably do better at the slower and easier paces than the faster end. Both shoes can handle similar types of run overall, I think. But if I had to choose one shoe, I think it would probably be the Novablast 5, based on a touch more top pace potential, a bit more versatility as a result, and the price. It's just cheaper. When I'm running with energy, the Novablast 5, I think, returns more than you get with the 1080 V14. However, if all you want is a smooth ride for your easy miles with guaranteed road protection and comfort, the New Balance 1080 V14 offers that, and it's very good at it too. I kind of prefer the slower miles in the 1080, but the Novablast 5 just shades it for me on this one.
So if I had to pick between these two shoes, I would be going for this one. Now, what I put that down to is that, for me, they are designed for the same types of runs. These are comfortable, cushioned daily trainer shoes. And given that this does it for less money than this shoe, it makes sense to go for this shoe. I'd also say this is probably going to be a more accommodating fit and shoe in general for more people. That's not to say that 1080 V14 is going to work for a lot of people as well too. But I just think given, what I've experienced in the Novablast 5 and, prioritising comfort, which both of these shoes do, I think that you're going to get that comfort here for less money on the Novablast 5. I think the biggest reasons to go for 1080 V14, as I said, it is a very solid cushion daily trainer as well, is I think the bounce in this shoe, which is moderately bouncy, has been more retained in my time in this shoe. But I think for me, the comfort side of things and just being, while not the lively, bouncy Novablast shoe that I thought it was going to be, is going to be a shoe that's going to be great for kind of handling shorter and longer runs at those easy to moderate paces, just like the 1080 V14, but it will do it for less money.
Okay, so my verdict on these two shoes is pretty easy. I think really it's... The comparison now really comes down to the type of running that you're doing. I think that the 1080 V14 is an all-round better shoe. I think it's a balanced, solid, stable daily cushion shoe, which can do a little bit more. If I was a beginner and I wanted one pair of shoes and I might go out and do some faster runs, and maybe I'm training for something and I want a shoe that can allow me to just maybe do a bit more and I don't want to buy loads of other shoes for training, I'd go for the 1080 V14. Novablast 5, I think it's a solid, comfortable shoe, but the problem with it is that unless you are the sort of runner that isn't ever going to do anything faster, it's a bit limited for those sort of faster training sessions. So for me, if I was to pick one of these shoes, I would definitely go for the 1080 V14. But I don't think the Novablast 5 is a bad shoe. I just think it's lessened the spectrum of what it can do. If you could still pick up a version of the Novablast 4, I'd say that is a superior shoe to both of these shoes. I think it's a far better shoe for most runners, and just gives you a little bit more, is a bit more versatile. And you could also look at shoes like maybe the Saucony Ride 17, which is a really solid daily shoe, which isn't too expensive, but is quite versatile as well. So I'd say that's up there with the Novablast 4. Wouldn't look at the Triumph 22 because I'm not a fan of that shoe, and I don't think it's particularly well designed for easy runs or for more versatile, faster training. So yeah, I'm going for the 1080 V14 on this versus.
Comes to the verdict, I find the 1080 V14 and Novablast 5 pretty similar overall. I think I've enjoyed them to a similar extent. I think I'd be using them for the same kind of runs, which, like I say, is mostly easy runs, relaxed daily training, long runs, that kind of thing. Both shoes do have a bit of versatility to them if you are looking for a cushion daily trainer. Probably similarly versatile. Maybe the Novablast 5 has a slight edge there, but I do think the overall ride feel is better in the 1080 V14 because of that better foam you have in the midsole. The Fresh Foam X, I think, is just a livelier foam, a nicer foam, a bit softer, a bit bouncier, just a bit more fun to run in. Like that said, it's not an absolutely huge and massive upgrade here on the Novablast 5. Like the price is very similar. I'd probably look at picking up the New Balance 1080 if I was looking for a nice cushion daily trainer. If I was looking for a shoe to do quite a wide range of runs, I'd probably get the Novablast 5 anyway, and it's also the cheaper shoe. And in general, as it is the cheaper shoe, it's probably the one I'd go for overall because, like I say, I think they're mostly pretty similar in terms of performance. If you can make a saving, it's always good to make a saving, and the Novablast 5, does a really good job. It's a shoe I really like. It is a good cushion shoe. I think that will appeal to lots of runners. But if the price was equal, I would look at getting the 1080 V14 myself for the kind of runs I'd use it for. Those easy runs, those daily training runs. I think the ride's just a little bit better because of that nice foam in the midsole.
So there you have it, that's been our head-to-head between the ASICS Novablast 5 and the New Balance 1080 V14. Hope you found it useful. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, do all of that stuff, ring the bell to hear about more videos when we've got coming up on the channel. We've got loads of head-to-heads planned for both of these shoes, so you'll know when those land if you ring that bell. If you're interested in both of these shoes, I'm going to pop a couple of videos up on the channel now that you should go and watch. Otherwise, as ever, thank you very much for stopping by and watching the videos. And yeah, in the meantime, until we see you again, happy running, people.